Let's go ahead and go to part of Tucker Carlson's groundbreaking research and reports last night.
House. Except it's not true. It now appears there actually was meaningful voter fraud in Fulton County, Georgia last November. That is not a conspiracy theory. It's true. From the beginning, this show has tried to be fact-based when we talk about the 2020 election results. So here's what we know tonight, factually. At least 36 batches of mail-in ballots from the November election were double counted in Fulton County. That's a total of more than 4,000 votes. Those numbers come from a group called Voter GA, which along with Bob Cheeley sued to get them. The final tally from the double counts we know about amounts to more than 3,300 votes for Joe Biden and 865 votes for Donald Trump. Now, before you dismiss Bob Cheeley and Voter GA as dishonest partisan actors, keep in mind that the strongly left-of-center Atlanta Journal-Constitution appears to agree with this, at least in outline. The newspaper reviewed the available digital ballot images independently and concluded that hundreds of ballots were improperly duplicated. What does that look like exactly? Well, here's what it looks like. At a press conference yesterday, a consultant with Voter GA called David Cross showed how we can be certain that votes in Fulton County were counted more than once. Watch.
Yo, check this out. This is crazy.
What I'm going to show you here is two ballots side by side. One of them is marked for Jason Shaw, and it's got a little squiggle mark next to it. You can see it's got the identical mark on the second one. And the ballot image is stored up here on the top left. So this one over here is scanner 5162. That's scanner number 3. Batch number 235. Image number 19. And that matches 234, image 59. So you have the same ballot counted twice in the images and counted in the audit. How that's possible, I don't know.
How's that possible? I don't know. Every American should want to know, because the answer gets to the heart of the integrity of our elections, otherwise known as our democracy. We're not talking about a couple of ballots here. We're talking about a lot of ballots, at least hundreds of ballots involved, enough potentially to affect the outcome of the election. Here's another example.
Here's one of the next ones. All right, so same batch, number 234, image number 2, and 235, image number 61. Republican, 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 all the way down to the point where this little spot up in Fannie Willis matches this one over here. There's no question that that ballot was counted twice.
So what's the explanation for this? Well, if you ask Fulton County, these discrepancies, the ones you just saw on the screen, were isolated incidents. Just a handful of bad ballots happens all the time. The county claims that any errors were caught in previous recounts. The problem is that neither one of those claims is true. Surveillance footage obtained by Voter GA appears to show large numbers of ballots being scanned multiple times. Pay attention in the tape we're showing you to the woman wearing yellow at the desk. According to Voter GA, she slides ballots into a scanning machine, removes the ballots, and then reinserts the same ballots. This happens multiple times. The question is, how many times were those ballots counted? Was each vote counted more than once? Fulton County won't answer that question. Now, one way to know the answer would be to check what are called audit tally sheets. Tellingly, for months after the presidential election, Fulton County failed to provide more than 100,000 of those tally sheets, including 50,000 of them for mail-in ballots. When Voter GA finally forced Fulton County to turn over the tally sheets, the conclusion was stunning. Here's what the audit found. Quote, 7 falsified audit tally sheets containing fabricated vote totals. For example, a batch containing 59 actual ballot images for Joe Biden and 42 for Donald Trump was reported as 100 for Biden and 0 for Trump.
Personally,
And you thought that was bad? Check this out.
Come back with you if you do need help.
yeah, the only other thing I guess that I was personally involved in on a couple of, not the only other thing, but an other thing that I was called to one of the counting tables is when we started opening duplicate ballots. There was almost one whole pallet of ballots that were called original/damaged ballots sent to duplication. And then there was quite a few boxes, mostly on one pallet, but scattered amongst 3 or 4 other pallets, where the duplicates were supposedly there for the duplicates that were sent to duplication. So if a ballot gets damaged and has to be sent to duplication, there is a very specific process in the Election Procedures Manual, Chapter 10, Roman numeral 2, Section 3, Procedures for Duplicating a Ballot. This stems precisely from ARS 16-621A, which says that they are to record an identical serial number on both the original and duplicate ballot, including spoiled duplicates. This ties the ballots together and creates a paper trail as required by the statute ARS 16-621A. We found, I would have to say, thousands of duplicate ballots where those serial numbers are not on them. And so it has created great difficulty to try to match up a duplicated ballot to its duplicate. And on thousands of the ones that a serial number was put on, they were put on by a, I guess you would call it like a dot matrix printer, very, very light. And unfortunately, they ended up being printed on the ballot on the top, usually top right part of the ballot, where the black square alignment marks are on the ballot. And so if a very light gray number is printed on little black boxes that are 1/4 of an inch apart, you see one number and you miss the next, and you see the number and you miss two, and it made for some very difficult matching of duplicated ballots and their duplicates, which, as I just read to you, one of the most important things you need to do when you duplicate ballots is reflect a serial number on both the duplicate and the duplicated, so that you can do two main things. One, make sure you have one for every one of the other, and two, make sure that you can look at the votes reflected on the duplicated ballot and make sure that they reflected those correctly from the ballot that was damaged and was duplicated. So without those serial numbers, it gets very difficult. We found some nice bright red serial numbers on many, but some very difficult to deal with light black numbers on many others, and none whatsoever on many others.
If the corresponding numbers aren't on there, how would you know whether it was duplicated once or 10 times?
You wouldn't.
Okay, thank you.
And up until recently, courts ruled that those ballots could not be examined for authenticity. Biden's claims of so-called recounts had nothing to do with validating votes, only recounting the same ballots without ever verifying the origins. Biden also said that merely questioning his election was tantamount to supporting slavery, Jim Crow, the Ku Klux Klan.
You can imagine the most undemocratic, the most unpatriotic, and sadly not unprecedented. From denying enslaved people full citizenship until the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments after the Civil War, to denying women the right to vote until the 19th Amendment 100 years ago, to poll taxes and literacy tests and the Ku Klux Klan campaigns of violence and terror that lasted into the 50s and 60s.
Then, in a strange reference to Supreme Court decisions in 2013 and 2 weeks ago, rulings that Biden does not like, he likens the court decisions and anyone questioning the 2020 election to an insurrection.
To the Supreme Court decision in 2013, and then again just 2 weeks ago, a decision that weakened the landmark Voting Rights Act, to the willful attacks, election attacks in 2020, and then to a whole other level of threat, the violence and the deadly insurrection on the Capitol on January 6th.
So on the one hand, Biden says any courts that refuse to look at evidence of vote fraud in the 2020 election is legitimate. But any court ruling he doesn't like is an insurrection against his authority. This raises serious questions about whether or not Biden has dispensed with our three branches of government and declared himself the supreme leader. Is it possible that this is an attempt to intimidate those who are seeking to audit votes, not only in Pennsylvania, but in Georgia and Arizona too? Is it because those investigations are turning up evidence of potential vote fraud? The entire tone of Biden's remarks were an attack on anyone asking questions about the 2020 election, saying nothing like this has ever happened. Biden critics would point out that throughout the entire Trump presidency, the Democrat Party, including Biden himself, falsely claimed that the 2016 election was hacked and Trump was an illegitimate president. And they had no evidence for those claims. For the past 40 years, Democrats have questioned almost every election of a Republican president. Now, when there's more reason to ask questions and be suspicious, Democrats tell us to shut up or else your questions might be considered an insurrection. For One America News in Washington, I'm Scott Wheeler.
Indictment has been filed by the Attorney General in Arizona against voter fraud in last year's general election. I am glad that we are sending a message that we take voter integrity seriously here in Arizona.
Democrats are also accusing auditors of endangering election integrity, which Arizona senators say is misinformation.